way to interact with the board early on is very important. Though this is a completely different style of matchup we're about to see.
Oh yeah, much slower paced match here.
While the Hunter-Warrior matchup is more about controlling the early board, try to preserve your life total, this is about trying to use your resources as efficiently as possible to match up with your opponent's threats.
Right, the previous game was more of a tempo match, and this one is going to be more about value.
Yeah, that's right. So game 3, we're going into the Warrior versus the Warlock. We call this Handlock for short. Very defensive but rampy style of deck where the more you life tap, the bigger your threats get as you continue to go on to the game. And this is a matchup that, just a year ago when Goblins vs. Gnomes came out, dominated the metagame. It was always Control Warrior versus Handlock, and it was one of these things where it often went to fatigue, and you had players holding on to cards for a long time in anticipation of each other's threats. I'm expecting a long, drawn-out match, unless one player seems to make a fatal mistake of not having a minion or not being able to play correctly on the board and just get run over. It's a very tight, intense matchup.
Yeah, pretty good starting hand from Trump here with those double shields, and it's very important to be able to deal with at least the first threat that is likely to come out on turn 4, but also being able to deal with the turn 5 is excellent.
The sort of modern style of Handlock deck does use the Void Caller in combination with Doomguard and Mal'Ganis as well, because it gives it additional turn 4 consistent threats. The Handlock deck typically uses the Molten Giant and Mountain Giant as its primary roads to victory, but the Void Caller as well allows it to have this additional consistency and the ability to get very powerful plays out of nowhere with the Mal'Ganis coming down early.
Yeah, you saw some of those Giants on screen. Those will be a key card. In fact, speaking of which, one of the Giants did come into play, and Trump did shield block, so he has available resources to basically deal with any minion that comes out here. Either the Twilight Drake comes out as a 4/9, or the Mountain Giant comes out as an 8/8.
Double slams and an execute right now. For Coreia, I don't think we're gonna see the Giant just yet, because it's so good for turn 5 where he can first life tap and play the Giant, so probably Twilight Drake or the Void Caller would be a little bit more efficient here.
And Trump has been lining up his early plays to enable the ability to use these shield slams to kill a big early minion.
And there's a lot of debate on new schools of thought of who actually has the edge in this matchup. Handlock's inserted demons and had a lot of big threats that scale into the late game very well, but Warrior's gotten more tools, just like Trueheart being one of them. You see that Trump also runs Ysera as a late game threat that's really hard to remove without Siphon Soul. So I'm really curious to see how these guys navigate each other's matchups, given that they have information on each other's decks.
Yeah, there's a lot of different playstyles too, for the Warrior especially. Personally, I like more the passive playstyle in this matchup, where you just don't even really try to kill your opponent, you just try to focus on removing every single threat and then getting that Ysera. Being able to delay the Molten Giants as much as possible is one of the key things to do.
Because the Molten Giants are reduced in cost for every health your hero has lost. We see one of them in Coreia's hand right now. Currently costs 14. Well, he's pretty far from being able to cast that. But if Trump were to attack him, he would reduce the cost of that Molten Giant and be able to come down a lot faster. So it's important to balance how much damage you're actually dealing to your opponent to manage those Molten Giants.
Some players even say that you never go face in this matchup unless you have lethal.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that eventually transitions as well. Warrior's not going to be defensive forever. You do have aggressive opportunities, whether it's through the Grillmosh, the combination of using some Whirlwind effect and activating its Enrage ability, or sometimes just direct damage. I mean, if you have Ragnaros or you have Bash, you can just go in for a little bit of damage and burn your opponent. And eventually that will gravitate towards that. But for now, Coreia is the one trying to put the onus of threat onto his opponent.
The way that you have to approach this matchup has a lot to do with how you decide to build your deck. If Trump, for instance, had a significant number of big game hunters, Big Game Hunter being a great answer to a lot of the big threats of the Giants coming out of the Handlock deck, he can play a much more attrition style of game where he's just trying to kill all the threats and then eventually just sort of baby burst kill you with draw. If you don't have those, it's much harder to play that style of game because the Handlock deck can keep drawing additional resources with life tap, and you may just eventually be ground out of any kind of removal.
Wow, such a weak turn from Coreia there. He does not want to play the Void Callers now because Charaxus is in the hand and you don't want to get the 315 on board. You'd rather have it replace your hero.
And, he doesn't want to life tap either because he'd be at 10 full cards. He'd burn an extra card, which he's going to draw anyways. a very awkward turn here for Coreia where he floats 4 mana instead. And Trump was, he was only hoping for one thing, that his opponent didn't play like an Emperor Thorson, because he did hold on to that weapon swing purposefully, so that way he doesn't attack and enable Molten Giants. But if the Emperor Thorson came out, he'd be short 1 damage and have to waste something else.
Yeah, if you Trump seeing that turn 6 Ancient Watcher pass is almost a dream come true. He knows he's in excellent shape for now.
So there is a play to coin Dr. Boom, and normally the idea is to get Dr. Boom out onto the board as early as possible, so you can have a lot of other plays open up. Is that the timing to do right now? Because he does have another play of just playing Justicar Trueheart very slow pace, because his opponent also took a very slow turn giver.
It's interesting. It depends on how Trump is trying to approach this matchup. If he's trying to go aggressive, coining out Dr. Boom, it can allow him to potentially try and burst his opponent down. He doesn't have Braum in his hand, though. So actually going aggressive in this position isn't going to really do very much, because he doesn't have the tools to actually finish the job.
I think that coining out the Boom here would have been a big mistake, because those Boom bots might even enable the Molten Giants. And he doesn't have, like you mentioned, he doesn't have the follow-up damage to the Boom, even if he manages to get a lot of pressure with it.
It's true. And one thing I actually forgot that Shield Maiden was in the hand too. The Justicar Trueheart gets destroyed by a Dark Bomb, and like you said, the actual threats that don't line up correctly, if you're wasting these minions, which normally can trade up in value, that's where you're at weakest. And like we said, Dark Bomb gets exposed here. Coreia will have to end up going for things that he doesn't want to do, because he doesn't have exactly the right hand for it.
Double Dark Bombs on that.
More awkwardness.
And that ends up being very good for Trump if Coreia does play both Dark Bomb, because that means that his Justicar Trueheart won't be able to be removed nearly as efficiently.
Right. You have the Hellfire, or you have to use a minion to trade in. Coreia looking like he's favoring that, though, because the alternative is playing nothing or a big game hunter, which doesn't seem either preferable.
Yeah, this is a matchup where your opponent is going to have, even though he doesn't have Giants, he's going to have some targets for big game hunter. And Trump just picked up his own, which, as we were saying earlier, is a big deal in this matchup, because there are a lot of big threats that big game hunter can take down.
Yeah, Trump can just really sit back and relax. He doesn't need to do much.
Yes.
It's Coreia who has to be making the moves, and Trump can't just react to those.
Well, I mean, Trump now has a little bit of space to start going into late game, because he's guaranteed with this big game hunter to answer any threat that would be coming out. That's huge. Not to mention that pretty much any minion he draws at this point is playable, because he's drawn so much of his removal, right? He uses both Shield Slam, he has an Execute in hand. It pretty much leaves only a couple of removal spells and his last weapon. Everything after that is bomb after bomb after bomb.
Yep. Twilight Drake. There's the big game hunter coming down. Deals with Trump's Dr. Boom quite easily, but he's still doing great.
Well, it's a weapon party. Trump has pretty much everything. I'd be surprised if he had a Gore Howl in his deck. Even though it is starting to get more popular nowadays, I haven't seen it, so it'd be like, whoa, he has Gore Howl. Now all of a sudden this matchup changes dramatically.
I'm not sure if he has to execute here. He has so much armor right now. He's up to 44 HP and has the Justicar to follow up. I wouldn't be surprised if he just leaves the Drake up for now. But on the other hand, I mean, it's a 4-10. So
he's going to be going with
the
boom box there. See where that goes. Oh!
That was just for one, though.
Just 1 damage on that big game hunter.
It was the target that he wanted to hit, but 1 damage not enough in this case.
He's going with the Execute. Given that he has the big game hunter in his hand, I think that he recognizes he has a lot of tools to be able to deal with most of the big things that Coreia might be able to play.
Right, so he doesn't need to save the Execute for Giant, because he has the big game hunter for that, so it makes a lot of sense to execute here.
Not to mention Bash. I mean, it is something that people underestimate. I think it's one of the most slept-on cards from TGT from the Warriors side.
I can't say I agree with Trump's use of the coin here. I actually think that with the Bash in his hand, the fact that he can deal additional 3 burst damage with a Grom combo kill toward the end of the game may end up being very relevant in terms of his ability to close the game out from a high life total.
But he just have a second Death Spite, so there's another way he can activate still.
It's less the activation and more simply the fact of being able to do that much more damage in 1 turn. If you're able to use Death Spite and Grom and Bash, your opponent is suddenly no longer safe at even 17.
Yeah,
it's true.
How much does the armor up here really... tank up really do here, already at 40.
Yeah, this is a matchup where you're mostly trying to line up threats and answers, and the additional 4 life this turn seems like it might just not be worth the loss of the coin.
Although I do think that if Trump's win condition is, I'm just going to make him run out of threats. and win through life. I mean, that is something what happens. Warlock taps through their deck very quickly.
Yeah.
And usually sometimes ends up 4 or 5 cards ahead of their opponent and racks up so much damage, and Warrior can outlast the battle. Look no further than the highlight reel we saw right before this entire day started, where Strelzik was able to outlast Bloody Face by doing the same exact thing.
So the Owl silences the Watcher. Now it loses its special ability, cannot attack, and takes down the Justicar True Heart.
Yeah, Coreia really scared of the Grom here, I believe, but that seems so early for Healbot.
That is a very early use of Healbot, because it is going to push him out of the range of being able to use his own Molten Giants.
Right.
Healing yourself, generally a good thing, but when you're playing a deck that relies on being damaged to play some of its most powerful cards, it can actually be a drawback.
I'm not sure exactly why he played the Healbot there. It's only getting him further away from the Moltens, and he was at safe life total anyway. He wasn't dead to Grom.
Well, the thing about not just playing the Molten Giants too is that the further you are from playing Molten Giants, the less you want to play Jiraxis, because those become dead cards, and the less you play Jiraxis, the faster of a clock that you have on yourself to end the game if you get closer to fatigue. And so it's one of these dangerous things that you have to be very careful of the implications of what it means to necessarily do that.
Yeah, Trump not really doing much here, but he doesn't need to.
I mean, this is we saw last game against the Hunter. He wanted all these weapons. This is a matchup where the weapons aren't quite as good. Yeah, these are excellent at removing small minions.
One Fiery War Axe was a bash kills a giant. I mean, it gets the job done.
I mean, he does have life to play with, so he can attack even into big minions. But right now, he doesn't want to attack his opponent's face because he's trying to keep those Molten Giants stranded in the hands.
Right. I sincerely think that fatigue might be just his win condition here. So he's going to play the long, drawn-out chess match, and Coreia is going to be on him to whether or not he wants to present the threats, and he doesn't feel comfortable. If you play Sylvanas on the board just as a threat, it might get answered. If he plays a Void Caller, what if it pulls out that Jiraxis and he needs that ultimately to win the game in the long run? It's very difficult to make this easy.
Even though Coreia's hand value seems to be a lot more than Trump's, I'm not seeing the win condition for Coreia right now. Like, how is he exactly going to win this game? It's so tricky.
It has to be like his opponent doesn't have removal for his exact threats.
Like a Mal'Ganis would get unanswered.
That's right. Or Jiraxis comes out and it's not executed. I mean, he did use an execute and 2 shield slings. There's a chance that 315 Jiraxis could do a lot of work.
And he decides to go with both of the Void Callers here. He has all of his demons with the exception of Doomguard in his hand right now. And those Void Callers, when they do die, their Death Rattle ability puts a random demon from your hand into play. So here, he really wants Mal'Ganis to go into play and not Lord Jiraxis. Lord Jiraxis have the battle cry of replace your hero with Jiraxis, and suddenly the hero power for Jiraxis is make a 6/6 demon instead of draw a card. So in that fatigue-based, attrition-based game we were talking about that this matchup can often come down to, that can really be the way that you win. So he's hoping that Trump doesn't have efficient way to deal with these, or if he does, he can only kill one of them, and that one brings out the Mal'Ganis.
Yep, the 3/4 stats on the Void Caller is quite good against the Fiery War Axe. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump just equipped the Death Spite here anyway. Kind of wasting the Fiery War Axe, but it's not a big deal. Hard to get value out of that one, and he still has another one in his hand for later on if he needs it.
I mean, value could be the enemy of, playing at a really good tempo onto the board sometimes. I mean, I feel like I've seen Trump often go for the value play of, like, I want to get something out of this Fiery War Axe, so if he attacks into this Armor Smith and get that extra point of damage, maybe I can use the Fiery War Axe to swing.
I mean, it looks like Trump has largely run out of many of his ways to deal with even just middle-sized minions here. Like, if Coreia just plays Mal'Ganis here, it's actually very powerful. He's able to generate like a really strong board presence, and clear Trump's Armor Smith and leave himself with 2 minions that's actually pretty difficult for him to kill. He does have the Big Game Hunter.
Yeah, the Big Game Hunter would answer it, but the whole point is the pressure from Coreia that he wants to generate. You don't expect Mal'Ganis to close the game, unless you're willing to hold on to it as your very last card so you can't die.
Right.
So it's either I leverage this so that a bigger threat can help me gain momentum, or I hold on to Mal'Ganis until the very last minute.
Those were some really good pickups for Coreia right there. Getting that Dr. Boom and the Lotep. Those additional threats might be a big deal.
Oh, Jiraxis.
Wow.
Really?
That would be very ambitious. I mean, although he's saying you probably don't have Gormash and Cruel Taskmaster. And if you do, I mean, Godspeed, because at that point, I just die. So he's taking that risk right here so they can get a big advantage.
And he chooses not to use his weapon. He wants to try and get attrition with that weapon.
Right.
If Trump played Harrison Jones right here, he'd draw a lot of cards.
You would.
But that's actually leaving the weapon on 8. actually makes it so that playing Harrison Jones would potentially fatigue Trump. He would overdraw and be much, much closer to running out of cards.
This is such an early Jaraxxus.
It really is.
It's so interesting, too, because not only is it a risk that you might die, but now, I mean, Trump can drop Alex Strauss. Before, you're kind of like worried about enabling the Molten Giants for him, but Molten Giants will not get played probably the rest of the game unless it's like a very desperate scenario where Jaraxxus is allowed to do so.
I'm still in disbelief about that Jaraxxus. Did it really happen?
It is very strange. Usually you save Jaraxxus until very late, once you've already played your Molten Giants.
Yeah.
Because Molten Giant cares about how much damage you've taken from your total life, and Jaraxxus has 15 total life, it's almost impossible to play Molten Giants while you are Jaraxxus.
Yeah, he didn't want Jaraxxus to get pulled out of those Void Colors, so he wanted to secure kind of getting that hero power. It might work out.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially just gone from a very conservative line of play to an extremely aggressive one.
Yes.
That's right. And it's worked out for him, and it might end up being the reason he wins ultimately, because those 6/6 minions that come out for 2 mana a turn are so hard to deal with unless you have the ability to close out the game immediately, or if you keep having things like, 2 brawls in your deck so you can keep the state of the 6/6s in check.
Yeah, Trump does not have a way to end the game fast just yet. He needs to pick up that Grom. But he ended up spending the play that Brian mentioned with the Bash. The Grom and the Bash on the same turn will no longer be available because of that coin that he used just for the armor up.
All right, well, Coreia is still mulling over his options here. I'm a big fan of just, if you have Jaraxxus hero power, just use it. Because you want to be able to be the most efficient mana usage for how big of a threat you generate. So, sure, you might be afraid of dying, but you can still load up a taunt wall with this Inferno.
Shield up!
Oh yeah, it's just stalling with the Inferno.
That's right.
Quite obvious.
And this does make Brawl cost the entire turn of your opponent, but it is still scary because if your opponent trades into this 3/3 and then brawls, I mean, that's still a lot that could be lost if like the Sun Fury Protector survives.
But,
Almost nothing
Trump doesn't have that. I mean, Trump has all of his tools that he really wished he had against the Hunter last game. He has all these weapons, he has these bashes, but he hasn't really had the opportunity to draw any additional cards with Acolyte of Pain, so he's just been drawing 1 card per turn, and he's sitting here with all the wrong answers. And this is one of the things that can be a real problem with control-style decks. So much of your deck is full of specific answers to specific styles of threats, and if you get the wrong answer at the wrong time, well, your opponent doesn't matter what threat they have, it can kill you.
This is actually quite interesting. He could attack into the Mal'Ganis first.
Yeah, he gets taken to the Void Caller.
Void Caller to
let
bring
Mal'Ganis come out. Then he has something
to
to Big Game Hunter that he wants to beat GH anyways, so he can use his mana efficiently. But then you have to put your opponent on that. He's like, he played Jaraxxus out and he has 2 Void Callers. If a Doom Guard comes out, am I in trouble?
Doom Guard is an issue, but it's gonna come out anyway next turn because the Coreia has the option to just trade in the Void Caller himself, and Doom Guard does have charge, so it's not a big deal if it comes out on his turn or on.
Alex Straza, Trump responds with another, aggressive, but he does heal his opponent for 3. I guess it's like you said, it's one of those things where, what are you supposed to do here if you're the warrior?
Yeah. What if he's trying to just win the game with those 2 bashes and the weapons?
Yeah.
It's possible to deal 15 with those 2 swings from the Death Spite. Well, yeah, almost.
I mean, just with the 2 weapons alone, assuming you can hit face every single turn, is 14 damage.
That is true.
It's a lot.
It's a pretty bold assumption against a deck with as many ways to generate taunt minions.
Right, but there are 2 big heavyweights bookending the hand of Coreia. He's got 2 Molten Giants on the sides, so he effectively worked with a 6-card hand, and that's one of the things about Jaraxxus. Not only do you want to worry about, is it a safe time to play it, how does my hand look after Jaraxxus? Do I have a lot of tools to do stuff?
Well, you have that button that says make a 6/6, so that's a tool to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a great tool, but if he has no taunt minions to really put a big wall between him and his opponent, I mean, he's always in danger of dying at that stage.
And here, Coreia is really respecting Brawl. He wants to leave both of those Void Callers on the board, so if Trump does play Brawl, he will end up with Mal'Ganis in play after the Brawl resolves. And there it is. There's the Brawl.
Where is it?
I mean, and now he starts attacking with the weapon too, realizing, you know what, I'm just going to start putting on some real pressure here to try to, set up a few turns to close the game. I'm not going to play against this Harrison for too much longer. And Trump, he's got a pretty clear mission here. Now if he draws Grom, he's still going to be a few points off damage here. But he can at least start being more aggressive onto the board.
It looks like he's thinking that he wants to play his Death Spike, clear that Void Caller, potentially get the Mal'Ganis out of there. If there is a Doomguard, he can at least still play Brawl, potentially.
Death Spike, the Fire War Axe would also kill the Void.
Yeah, I think it probably makes the most sense to play the War Axe first.
Yeah. How often do you get Fire War Axe to actually do stuff onto the board? So
the big issue is that if he were to just play his Death Spike, he would no longer have a Grom enabler if he drew Grom later on. He would have to use it both.
And ironically enough, the Void Call actually heals from the Mal'Ganis. Thank you very much. It's out of the range of the Fire War Axe now.
Mal'Ganis, aka Voodoo Doctor.
Yeah, literally. In this scenario, the Emperor Thorson, I wonder how good it is in this hand. And Coreia also used Shadow Flame. That's one of the best tools that you can use if a board gets too big. So, he is using some of his removal options as well. So the hand of Coreia is starting to restrict a little bit. And that's where Emperor Thorson might open up opportunities, because all of a sudden you can play Dr. Boom and Defender of Argus on the same turn.
And if Emperor lives for 20 turns, he can cast those Molten Giants for free. That's right.
Actually, if Jiraxis takes a little bit of damage, maybe even earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe. We might see a Molten Giant this game onto the board. We'll see. Who knows? A very tense moment here. Coreia has to make sure not to overstep either. It's one of those things you can very simply overextend to the board with Dr. Boom and put in Brawls to Boombot survives. So you have to be very careful.
Is he going for the taunt? Yep. It's the last taunt giver he has right now.
And no Inferno either.
Finally, the armor of Trump can be broken down. First blood.
That's right.
Oh, there's more armor.
So, does this provoke a brawl here from Trump?
I mean, it's tough because Trump, he can't let this board sit and play for multiple turns. I think that he would rather try and save the brawl, but I don't think he has much option at this point. I think that he needs to do something to stem the bleeding.
Well, he does. He actually can remove just through playing bashes. I mean, bashes aren't going to be with the Grom combo because he can only play one at the turn. Although he could use bash as 6 direct damage if he wants to go for an aggressive stance and say, you don't have heal bot, I'm going to go for it. So he can use bashes and his weapon to just clear the board, partially here.
I think he may want to kill this Void Caller first and then brawl.
Yeah,
just
also
because he doesn't want to risk there being a Doomguard left over.
He's trying to get the Doomguard into the brawl, but
this is actually it ends up just being a kind of a waste of his resources here, unfortunately for Trump.
Yeah. So now he doesn't need to brawl. Going to wait one more turn with Execute.
All right. This is leaving Emperor Thorson in play, though.
6 cards
which is
for me.
a little scary.
I was thinking about potentially preemptively equipping the Death Spite here, but just get the armor up. Just get that 4 because of the Justicard that was played earlier.
I mean, one thing that's really interesting, too, is that, it's sort of inviting your opponent to play more minions onto the board because everything becomes cheaper, right? So it's like, yeah, sure, I can play Dr. Boom and all those other things. And, I mean, if Coreia feels like the need to continue to load up the board, that could end up sabotaging him because of Brawl. So if Coreia says, you know what, I'm going to go aggressive, you don't have the Brawl, because you still have 10 cards in your deck and you don't have it.
I mean, Coreia both has the Emperor Thorson in play and just the hero power that generates a 6/6 each turn. He can't really feel like he's legitimately under pressure to have to play additional minions.
Sure.
And there's the Brawl.
Well, there's one disastrous outcome. But it seems like he's avoided it. Lotheb is the one that survives.
And that's actually the best outcome for Trump, because this is a minion that he can actually easily remove if he so chooses.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
You can. Do you think he can attack face here because he knows the whirlwind effect will clear, so he can set up the idea that he has Grom to potentially go into lethal.
I do think he wants to scare Coreia into having to play around Grom.
So it's like you have to use heal bot next turn,
right? Or set up some sort of taunts.
And, he's got taunts. A lot of taunts, especially with Dr. Boom post-Brawl. That's a really powerful spot here for Coreia to be in. I would feel pretty comfortable, although it is something to consider that Control Warriors these days do consider running 2 Brawls. So that way they're very effective against board flood, primarily through Patrons or, in this case, Handlock.
Interesting. He can also just play the Sylvanas out and potentially taunt that and the Infernal up.
Yeah.
That does mean that the Sylvanas can immediately die because, along with the Lotheb, because it is only a 5/5. Dr. Boom is another possible option, and because of the cost reduction, you can actually play Dr. Boom and Argus at the same time.
Yep, the Defender of Argus seems like the obvious thing to do here. He needs the taunts, and by buffing the Lotte +1/+1, it will no longer die to the death travel from the Death Spike.
Yeah, he could play Sylvanas and leave that to the side and buff the other two with taunt, and it does keep the Livid alive. That's probably, if he is going to play the Sylvanas, that's probably the best positioning for it.
He also could just be taking the method of, I don't need Dr. Boom right now. I'm just going to take it very slow.
And here, Trump would just, he is in a really bad spot here. He doesn't really have much that allows him to really contest this board very well. He's already down to 12 life. He had that 40-something life thanks to the Justicar Trueheart and all the armor ups. But now, all these big minions from Coreia, thanks to the Infernal generation of Jiraxis, has put a huge dent in his life total.
Right, and it's one of the scenarios too, like, does he want to use the weapon? And that is his last activator for Grom, at least as far as we know. So if he does that, then he's going to be in a very awkward spot from this point on. It's like, he can clear board by executing Bashing or even just playing Armor Smith onto the board, but it's very risky. If your opponent has the Doom Guard drawn off the top, with just a few cards remaining, you could just be dead.
Here, Trump has to be thinking not only, how do I not die, but how do I even win this game at this point? He's used his Death Spite. His ability to actually burst his opponent down is gone. Yeah, and he's facing Jiraxis. He's not going to win via attrition. This is a game that's really slipped away from Trump since Jiraxis came down.
Absolutely. The decision from Coreia to play that Jiraxis early on is paying off big time. It worked out so well for him, getting those Infernals.
Healbot coming in the hand is probably not what he wanted. I think he wanted the Doomguard to potentially end the game right there. Actually, he would have because he had Hellfire in hand. So, Coreia still missing the key piece to end the game right here. And now the Sylvanas is preemptive onto the board. It's a little tricky with how you navigate things, but there's still ways around it. You can have the Sun Fury Protector force taunts into
He could have it here with the Dr. Boom Hellfire. With the boom bots.
Oh, yeah. But then what if
that's kind of dangerous.
What if he
that could
steals
go
Dr.
very,
Boom,
very, very wrong.
And you die.
Both of the boom bots on the Sylvanas and then stealing the boom.
There are people who would argue that anytime you have any chance of lethal, you should go for it. This is not one of those situations.
No, he's so far ahead. It can't be worth it. It would be very likely that those boom bots would be lethal, but
not with this much on the line, at least.
Yeah, it's not happening.
He is going with Dr. Boom here.
It is a chance.
Is he doing it?
He is saying that some of the plays might bamboozle his opponents. Okay. It was one of those things.
Taunting
just
up.
maybe.
Right.
Trump needs a second brawl of some sort.
That's not it. Trump can potentially steal Dr. Boom or the Infernal, but I think he's still dead.
Yeah, he can play the Acolyte.
Hit the
back.
Yeah. Probably to play.
Get a second brawl.
Oh! Well, that's it.
That's it.
Trump's run out of options. Game number 3 goes to Coreia. And Coreia goes up to a 2-1 lead.
And I believe Coreia's final deck is also Control Warrior.
I believe so. And that's going to be very interesting. These are the two players who brought Control Warrior. And so we might